So I've gone through the add-in and sub-summary sheets. Now let's get to the cool part where we tie it all together and create general summary sheets. So you guys have all seen this file, the GenSum file. What you guys probably didn't know was that the whole time there's been a hidden tab called ProjectInfo until now, where we were finally ready to release it. So you can unhide the ProjectInfo tab, and this tab is what brings it all together. So I tried to set it up so that it would be as simple as possible and not confusing. So hopefully you guys don't find it confusing. So the way it's set up is the top is kind of like headings and descriptions and buttons, basically. Each section is set up with these vertical green lines to kind of help visually see the different sections, as well as I put numbers so you could just step through the sections. So I will start from step 1 and work through everything, and see how simple it is to create your general summary sheet. So the first section says sub-summary Excel files. So this is where you list all of your sub-summaries and bridge summaries that were all set up, out of those 5 types I mentioned in the previous videos. Only those types will work. If you select one that's not that, it'll tell you that it's not a valid summary type and no data can be extracted from it. So it's real simple. This activate column, you can put whatever you want in there and it's going to activate that row. And you'll see that it put this path, this combo box, and a search button. So don't worry about the path. That's there for the code to find the file later on. But when you activate it, these things appear, and this combo box is populated with every Excel file that was found at the same location that this GenSum file is saved at. So if you look at the path, you'll see this long path, but this folder is where this file is actually saved in, and that's what's used as the basis to find other Excel files. Typically your general summary files with the rest of your roadway summary sheets, at least, maybe not the bridge ones. So the intent is to get most of the summary files in this drop down right off the bat. If not, you can use this search bar or button and you can navigate to wherever the file is. Now this is whatever, it's going to select the folder, you select the file, and it fills out, it changes the location, which I didn't change, but if you change the location, the path would be updated, and whatever file you selected gets populated in there, and the drop down gets repopulated with all the Excel files in that new destination that you chose. And so you will basically list all of your summary files for a given project in this section. So I do want to mention there's an in file question mark column, and so what this is for is if you wanted to move all of your summary files inside this GenSum file, you can do that. District 12 is actually, that's how they do it, and that's why this is here, because District 4 and District 12 were the first 2 districts to implement this automation. So you can set up your summary files or sheets to exist inside this file, and when you switch this to an X, it will switch this, and now it'll say the name of this file, and it'll be populated with all the sheets that are viable. Now since I don't have any summary files in this file, it's blank, but why would you want to do that? District 12 does it so that they can link all of their page numbers, and so then they can get it all to change really easily, so you don't have to worry about page numbers being wrong and whatnot, and they do some referencing as well. So that may be a reason to do that. But if it's a big project, this file could get huge, and then only one person can work on it. And so there's pros and cons both ways, but it's available to you if you want it. So I'm going to go back to my way. So I don't need this one. So I've already went through and set up some temp data. And so here's all the files, or the summary sheets. So now that should be most of the items, but there still are items that just don't exist on a table or summary sheet. Typically it's in the general notes sheet. You'll have items and quantities listed, as well as there's some that just don't appear anywhere but the general summary sheet itself. And so that's what section 2 is for. It's for all those random items that you just can't extract data from a summary sheet because they're not there. So section 2 is going to be where you list the rest of your items. So between these 1 and 2, you should have all the items listed. And so the way this is set up is you have a page number, split number, item number, quantity, and additional description. This unit description column is a formula that's filled out when you type in the item number. So each line, the quantity can only pertain to one split. So for example, this maintaining traffic is being split across 2 funding splits. So I needed 2 lines for that. And as well, you'll see the page number is 0. That's because maintaining traffic doesn't appear anywhere else in the plan. Same thing with like a field office. Your typical ones are, maintaining traffic, field office, construction layout, stakes, and surveying, and mobilization. Those are your typical ones that don't appear. So if it doesn't appear anywhere, you put a 0 for the page number. If it does appear somewhere, like on page 6, this one goes on page 6. It's in split 1. Here's the quantity, the item number. It's partial depth pavement repair, and that's between splits 1 and 4. So you can have spaces as you need. Blank ones doesn't matter. It just won't care about that row when it brings the data and organizes it all. So this probably is the most tedious part of this whole process, but typically these items are the same throughout all your projects, so you can, once you do it once, you can usually go grab it from another one, and it won't take so long. So once you fill out sections 1 and 2, all your data should be there, and a couple more steps and you'll see the really cool part about how fast and easy this makes things. So section 3 is funding splits. You're just going to list all your funding splits, split number and then the split name. Make sure you use these forward slashes, or the code doesn't like that if you use backslashes. So again, you can have spaces if you want. If you wanted to start, leave the first row blank, you can do that. That's fine. So now you'll see this at the top. There's bridge work. If you don't have bridge work, good. Don't worry about it. If you do, you just want to check that on, and you get 2 more steps. So, bridges, they just always cause problems with creating this general summary sheet. So they kind of have to be handled separately, because as you know, each structure needs its own heading. And before, we didn't typically show all that data on the general summary sheet. And so this way, we'll handle it. We'll take it all and make the data sheet correctly. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So the step 4, you're just going to fill out all the bridges. So what page number that bridge summary is on, the name of the bridge, what split number that bridge goes with. Is it greater than equal to 20-foot span or not? Is it a new build, or is it just a repair or something like that? These 2 are needed so that the code can figure out what structure heading it should go under. And so these bridges, you list them all. There should be a bridge summary sheet to go with it, which you would list back here in section 1, which is right here, this last one, CEQ, that's what I named it. That's my bridge summary file. So step 5 is something that I don't envision being used pretty much ever, maybe occasionally. What this section is for is if for some reason you don't have a bridge summary, you can list items here, and then it will be able to, handle the bridges appropriately on the general summary sheet and when you go to create a data sheet. But I can't think of too many situations where you wouldn't have a bridge summary sheet. So, this works similar to section 2, except you need a little more data, like the bridge name. Is it over 20-foot span? Is it new construction? And then this is similar to section 2, back here. So I don't envision that being used too much, but that's how you use it. So now that you have, by this point, everything should be listed. So now the part that I love the most is this step 6, bring in data. You click this button, it's going to cycle through all the sub-summary sheets you listed, all of the items you listed in section 2, the bridge stuff you listed, and it's going to extract all the data and summarize it into this section right next to it over here where my mouse is. So that went pretty fast. I mean, that was pretty fast. I extracted all the data and organized it for you. And so this section is what makes it all possible. So this section creates a summary and applies a custom sort to all the items. So the custom sort's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty good. So all the items are combined. So if it's the same item number and same additional description, it goes on, all the quantities are summed together for that particular item and additional description combination, which is how you would set up your general summary sheet. You would only have one line for that. So it does that for all the data it finds. And then it tries to sort it to the correct heading. And the way it does that is it looks at the first 3 digits of the item number. I call it the item code here. So each 3-digit item has a default heading to sort to. Now there are some 3-digit item codes that could go in one heading or another heading depending on the actual number itself. So that's why I say it's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty darn close. And so you see that there are some red right here. These item numbers are red, and that's an indicator to say, hey, this 3-digit item code is known to go in more than one heading. So I'd give it a check to make sure it's in the right one. So in this case, it is in the right heading, but just say it wasn't in the right heading, you can easily move that item to the appropriate heading just by adding the correct heading abbreviation to the front of the number. So you'll see right here I have all the headings listed, and after the heading is an abbreviation. So that abbreviation is what you would type in front of this item code to get it to sort to the right spot. So say I wanted to move this first item down to drainage for some reason. All you would have to do is add a D to the front of that item. So now that that's there, you can hit the resort button. But I'm going to wait because I'm going to make all my edits in the resort when I'm done. So another thing that happens a lot is, say on your pavement sub-summary sheet, you listed a thickness. Well, on your general summary sheet, you don't typically list that thickness. You don't really want that, so you'd delete these additional descriptions that you don't typically put on a general summary sheet. So you notice that now that causes these 2 items and additional descriptions to now be the same. So what's going to do is it's going to combine those to one line as well when I hit resort. So I'm going to hit resort now. Just like that, it fixed all those changes. It combined that to one line, added the quantities, as well as it moved that 202 down to drainage. Just like that. So after you make your edits and resort, you have your whole organized, sorted list that would go into the general summary sheet. So now you can just hit this Make GenSum button and it'll fill it out for you. And so that's what I'll do now. So I hit that. And it's all filled out now. So it saves you a lot of time. It figured out how many pages there were, and it changed it to display that many columns for pages. Same thing with parts. It filled those out, filled in all the quantities, all the items and everything. So now you still see some red stuff, so you still have some steps after this part. Like the C sheet number, I didn't grab that data from anywhere, so it still needs to be filled out. So you can fill it out here. Now the really cool thing is I know what you guys are thinking. Well, that's all dandy, but what happens when I update my sub-summary sheet and the quantities changed? How do I update this? So you go back to here, you'd bring in your data again, and you'd hit Make GenSum. Oh, but what about all those changes I just made? Well, that's the even cooler part, is that it remembers all of the changes that you made in this section right here. If I were to bring in data again, it will remember that I wanted that item to be under drainage. So as long as the item number and additional description doesn't change from the sub-summary sheet, it remembers what to do with that. And I do that through this column, which you don't need to worry about, but this is an ID I assign to each unique item code and additional description combination. And that's how I can remember what changes you made. Same thing with if you delete some additional descriptions. It will remember those changes as well. Same thing with I added this C sheet number. It will remember that change for the next time you bring it in. And one other thing it also remembers. So with sheet numbers, when you grab the data from your sub-summary sheets, those are rounded page totals. Well, for the part quantities, that's not rounded, because for one column on the sub-summary sheet, which let me open that up to show you. For example, once it loads, for example, this pavement planing, all this quantity is under funding split 2, but this last one's under funding split 1. So, down here it totals it all and rounds it. Well, the split quantities aren't rounded. So that leaves us a chance of error between the rounded value and the total value. So the sheet numbers, it grabs that sheet total. So these numbers will match exactly the sheet totals on each of your sub-summary sheets. Now the part, it takes it from, oops, didn't mean to open that. It takes it from all this inside part, because it needs to know each quantity which each split. So none of that data is rounded. Well, these, the total from the sheets need to meet the total from the parts. So the code tries to round it, but sometimes it's off a little bit, because it is rounding, and you can have rounding errors. So that's what this red is from, is rounding errors. Because if you look at the total from here, 4304 is the total for the sheet numbers. Now the part, 4304. So it's one off. That's a good inkling that it's just a rounding error. If it's more than 1 or 2 off, then you probably forgot to fill out a part or a split number in this column, and that's where it missed that quantity. But if it's only 1 or 2 off, that's just rounding error, and you can just change it to what it should be. And so that's the last thing that it also remembers. On a rerun, it will remember that change. So I added some things. Now let's bring in the data again and show you that it really does remember all this stuff. So let me bring in data again, and you'll see that it will remember, this. I wanted this to be in the drainage, and I got rid of some of those additional descriptions. It will remember this 11 and this change I made to the quantity for the part. So I'll bring in data. So it clears out this list, and it regrabs all that data, and you'll see that drainage is still there. Those descriptions are gone. And now let's make the general summary sheet again. And you'll see that was remembered and that was remembered. So you don't really lose your work. Now, if you go and change a quantity on the sheet number side, yeah, you're going to lose that because you shouldn't be changing that. If you need to make a change there, you should go back to your summary sheet and make the change there, because that's where the change needs to be made. So the only thing that currently gets lost on a rerun is if you add spaces. Now, in an older version, I did have that being remembered, but when I rewrote all of it, I didn't get a chance to add that. So that might be something I add in the future, but with the enhance insert spaces button, I don't foresee it being that big of an issue, considering the amount of time you save by doing it this way. So a couple other things. So this had bridge data on it, but you'll see I didn't list all the quantities, and it's not listed even on the page below like we said you can do. With this automated process, it knows what to do with all the bridge data, so it created this bridge tab, and that's where it put all that bridge data. Same thing with retaining walls. If there was a retaining wall, it put it there, because this section can't handle that, because each item combined with the additional description has to be unique, but it only goes on one line. But two different bridges could have the same item and additional description, and the way this code is set up, it can't handle that. It views that as being one. It's going to want to combine it, so this section can't handle those bridges and retaining walls, and that's why we throw them off to the side here on the separate tab. And when you create the general summary sheet, it knows you can do it like this, where it says for these details, see estimated quantities. When you create the data sheet, let me add a contract ID. It will grab that data from that spreadsheet and throw it in, and we'll see that we look, all the structure data is there. Pretty cool. So you don't have to worry about it now. Now that only works with this automated process. If you don't do the automated process, you still got to throw all the bridge data on this general summary sheet, because that's the only way that it gets to the data sheet. Now, if you did want to show all the bridge data, there's some options. You can just toggle this on. When that's on, same thing with retaining walls. If you wanted to show all those items, you toggle that on. But I don't have any retaining wall items, so with that toggled on, if I make GenSum, you'll see now all the items will be there, all separated by each bridge like they're supposed to be separated. Each bridge gets its own heading. So pretty cool. It handles all that. I know that was a tedious part of this new process of submitting this spreadsheet that now you don't have to worry about, but you have to use this process and those bridge type sheets. It has to come in from from the section 1 bridge type sheets. So a couple other things left to talk about is back over here there's a clear button and a clear memory button. So I mentioned it remembers all those things that you change so you don't have to redo your work. Well, maybe you don't want it to remember that change for some reason. You messed up and you didn't want it to remember that. This clear memory button will clear all those changes that's being stored. The clear button will clear the memory and everything on the sheet. So if I hit clear memory, you just lose the memory part. You don't lose all of these items from the sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It just cleared out everything else. And the clear button is going to just wipe everything clean. So, in another video, I'll go over kind of behind the scenes stuff for people. Most people don't need to worry about it. But yeah, all this stuff over here is more stuff behind the scenes that I'll talk about. But for the majority of you, when you see these red vertical lines, you don't want to go any further. It's all being used by the code. So I think this is pretty cool. I hope you guys find it cool. I hope you guys implement it. If you guys have questions, let me know. I'll be happy to help you guys out and getting this set up. But that, in my eyes, this is going to save you guys a lot of time on each project. So I'll see you guys in the next video.